To me, the most important thing is your life is not coming at you, it's coming from within you. And I believe all of us have divinity within us. And if you connect to that divinity, when you and I connect on an authentic basis, that divinity, and it's really our purpose is how do we use our God-given gifts for the benefit of our families, humanity, the world, and figuring out what that gift is and executing on it and providing like tremendous value. It's going to make you really happy.
I want to get into all the philanthropic work and how you got to where you're at today, but let's start with a little bit of background. So you grew up in the Republic of Panama. Maybe kind of start there, then I want to go through the White House journey and some of the learnings. So yeah, give us some background.
Sure. Look, my mom and dad met at Georgetown University. My father was Panamanian. He wanted to be a heart surgeon. My mother was at nursing school. They got married, and I was born in Georgetown, but 2 years old, I was growing up in the Republic of Panama. So I grew up bilingual. Half my family's there. I decided to go to the U.S. Air Force Academy. I wanted to fly airplanes, but my eyes didn't cooperate. When you're studying under the covers with a flashlight, my eyes went to like 2200. So I was fluent in Spanish. So they sent me to Latin America as an intel officer in the 1980s. I had the good fortune of meeting a 4-star general who became the NATO Supreme Allied Commander. And I did a lot of work for him. Published some major work in the area that then got published by U.S. News and World Report magazine. And Mort Zuckerman recommended I apply for the White House Fellowship. And General Galvin, who became the NATO Supreme Allied Commander, nominates me. So here's this young second lieutenant in the Air Force, and no one can figure out why the NATO Supreme Allied Commander and the chairman of U.S. News and World Report are both recommending him. So at 27, I ended up working for Ronald Reagan, and that led to a long career in government and public service.
Okay, that's amazing. And so it was late 80s, was it 88, 89? You became the youngest White House fellow at the time?
I was right? At the time. I don't know if I still have that record. And no one had ever written a book about the White House Fellowship. And I thought, wow, if I could call as many White House fellows going back to 1965, it would be an amazing experience. So it took me about 4 or 5 years to interview about 220 of them and write the first book on the White House Fellowship.
Yeah, I downloaded the book, haven't got into it yet, but it's all on leadership. You've got 26 chapters and everything is really about leadership. What was a sort of a big or a couple big takeaways from all those interviews about leadership lessons from that?
Well, Colin Powell was an interesting guy. So I reached out to him and he said to send him a list of questions, which I normally don't do. I did. And he wrote back, you can get that in this biography, do your homework. Like, oh my goodness. So I wrote him another list and he sent me, you can get those answers in this book, do your homework. So finally, I called a few fellows that had worked for him and I asked them, what are questions that if I asked Colin Powell in the middle of an interview, he'd stand up and leave? And I was kind of upset and I just sent them to him. And he wrote back, oh, I see you're finally prepared for the interview. We'll schedule something. And just the interactions with him he also said, I don't like the title of the book. You need to change this because of that. And I did. So I learned a lot just interacting with these incredible individuals that have been around power their whole life. And how do you move the ball in a system where power is so dispersed, like Washington, D.C.? How do you get anything done?
Yeah. And advising 6 different presidents, I imagine there's a lot of differences, but there's probably similarities in what you're talking about, the environment, within which you need to start, to affect change. What are some lessons there working with the different presidents and being able to have the impact they want to have?
Look, you had I worked for presidents of both parties, and when you work for a president, you also respond to the people around them, the chief of staff, the secretary of defense, and you're appointed by the president. You swear an oath to do certain things. So the U.S. Air Force Academy had a sexual assault scandal, and the military tried to sweep it under the rug. Then they appointed a woman called Tilly Fowler, who was a congressman from Florida, first woman on the Armed Services Committee. She wrote a scathing report that ended up with 2 generals being fired, which never happens. She called me and said, I want you to be, the chairman of this new board. And I said, why are you calling me? I retired as a captain. Why don't you call a general? And she was like, those have been captured by the system. I see what you've been doing in the state of Florida. I've been reading about you in the paper. And we need somebody like you that's not afraid to shake up the system. And I decided to do it. And so many times, you sit with a 4-star general, you sit down with the secretary of defense, and he's telling you, I just met with the president and he told me to tell you this is what he wants. Right. And that happens all the time. And what I always said was the one agreement that I had in taking this position is I'm willing to do whatever the president wants to do. And he has my cell phone and he can call me. It could be a 2-minute call and I'm standing by. and guess what happened? You never got the call, and it was their own personal agenda. So and then several times I had to go to the president because they wouldn't give me the information that I needed. And interestingly, there was a vote every year to be the chairman of the Board of Visitors of the Air Force Academy. And every single year, the U.S. military tried to do a coup so that I wasn't the chair that I had to deal with. So, there's regulatory capture. And of course, you can play ball and get all these nice perks and benefits, but that's not what I was there for, which is why I probably kept getting called back. And sometimes I'd get in trouble with presidents doing things, my way. I remember going to meet President Bush, not senior, but in Crawford, Texas. And I shook his hand and I said, I just want you to remember what Ronald Reagan once said. If someone is your friend 80% of the time, they're your friend and not your enemy. And so I think being willing to do what is right and let the chips fall where they may. And hey, if the president wants me to resign, that's okay too. If they want me to do something, have them call me. I, work for them and the American people. So, but too often people get into these roles. I was on the State Board of Education in Florida reporting to Jeb Bush, and it's a $22 billion business, education. And the phone starts ringing. Book publishers. It's just unbelievable. And you get a lot of perks. But being able to walk away from that and being the type of leader that people know, hey, there's not buying this guy with this or that. He's going to do at the end of the day what he feels was right.
I remember at the State Board of Education, you head up the reading task force and got some pretty extraordinary results. Talk about that and what did you do to actually get the results different?
Well, we couldn't figure out why a third of Latino students were dropping out of high school. And we went and looked at everything. And the bottom line was that from kindergarten to 3rd grade, kids they learn to read. And then from 4th on, they read to learn. And the vocabulary picks up really fast. So if you're not reading at grade level by third grade, you're screwed. And these kids were dropping out by ninth grade. So we said you can't, and there was something called social promotion. They just promote everybody. But here, if you don't read at grade level, you don't go to fourth grade. And now that created this huge issue in the system where, wow, we have to actually teach these kids how to read. And then when that happened, it was incredible. So right now in Florida, African American fourth graders read better than whites in 33 states. And Latinos have the highest graduation rate of any state from high school to then college. So if you look at the effect that's having on the economy, it's massive. And 25% of K-12 is Latino in Florida. So that's a big number. In California, it's 50%.
Yeah. And what did you do different to get the result over what the status quo was?
Well, what happened is the big book publishers came into the 67 counties and they started lobbying that the phonics books should be changed to something called whole language. California went from the top 5 in reading to the bottom 5 after 10 years from implementing whole language. So these books were already coming into the system, and we did something at the state level that if you were going to get federal dollars, you needed to use any one of these 5 approved books. You couldn't use anything else. The problem with education that you have 67 counties, 67 superintendents, 67 school boards that operate independently. So in order to get them to do anything is a challenge unless you have monies that you're willing to deny them that they need. So that's what we had to do. And, Jeb Bush was number one target of the teachers' unions. The teachers' unions are the number one donor in Democratic politics. So it's a huge, and it's really all about the teachers, not enough about the children. My mother was a 7th grade science teacher for 23 years. I worked for Bill Bennett as well when I was a White House fellow, when he was Secretary of Education. He then left to and came back in as the nation's drug czar, but spent a lot of time trying to have an effect in education. And I think it's the most important thing that, we can do for our children, and particularly in the public schools.
Yeah. Yeah. In Arizona, I've been working on trying to improve conditions for K-12 students to learn for a long time now, involved in a number of nonprofits. I ended up doing something from outside the system. I started a organization called Dinner Table, and it's 18 months. We've got 40,000+ parents in our free community and a growing number in a couple of different paid communities. But I thought, well, let's get a bunch of parents raising kids that create value in the world, which is what I think the purpose of an education is. Have them own it for their kids, not an institution with, like you're sort of pointing to, a lot of conflicts of interest. And what I learned, a long time ago, we'd go to the state legislature trying to pass things through that would be beneficial for the kids, but it was literally almost always adults fighting over money, not about the kids. Who gets the school bus contract, who's donating the most money to the political campaigns, et cetera. So, it kind of led me to, because I do a lot of work in leadership, thinking about, we need more leaders that are capable and moral, not capable of winning an election, capable of getting the outcome we need for that agency. And they're making win-win decisions for everybody because they're actually moral people. What are the lessons you've learned about navigating those conflicts of interest?
Well, to work with them. So one of the greatest things I've done in education, I was a founding board member in 3DE schools, which arose out of junior achievement. So I'm crazy about entrepreneurship. Junior achievements in 22,000 schools, teaching kids entrepreneurship, work readiness, financial literacy. And they were going into schools, and teachers love junior achievement. So here's a board of 7 with 5 Fortune 500 CEOs being chaired by the chairman of Home Depot. It started in Atlanta. We took the worst school, F school, about to be closed, and we were able to turn it around and make it an A school. How did we do that? We focused on engaging the kids. It was a 99% African American school. So instead of having one teacher at the front of the class, we had a pod of 5 teachers that would what we went to the business community is we got case studies like you study in business school. So kids were put in different groups and they were competing on a project. So maybe it was calculus and they had to create a pendulum to launch a 5-pound like watermelon at the school football field, and whichever went the farthest won, and they got a prize. Or they were working on a problem that arose at Home Depot or Delta or one of the Atlanta companies. And when they came to present their solutions, the VPs that looked like them from those companies would listen to them, sometimes like, wow, we never even thought about that. And they would give first, second, third, fourth, and fifth. Then after the awards and the trophies, they'd get on a bus and they'd go to that company. And it's like, look, if you graduate from high school, you can get these jobs. But if you graduate from high school and go to college, you can be like me. And I came from your neighborhood. Now I drive, a BMW, and I'm married and I own my own house. And then that would motivate the kids to go back. And then we would mix the kids up because a big part of it is leadership. So we'll mix you and then if there's any disruption in class, you're gone, because it was 1,800 kids. We took 600. And one African American woman came in and said, wait a minute, my son, who's been an F student, is now a straight A student. He wants to go to college, but you didn't take my 2 daughters who are better. I want to get my 2 daughters into this. And then the other teachers, the 1,200 kids, the teacher's like, wow, this is a lot of work, but I'd like to teach in a pod where you're teaching them English and history and math and calculus by working on these problems where the kids see, oh, this stuff is actually relevant. I got to use these equations to create a pulley system and then put it together to launch something. Oh, okay. This calculus stuff is interesting. So by making it experiential for the kids and baking it into almost like MBA case studies, and having the teachers work together in class, except instead of one-on-one, they loved it. I mean, it was a lot of work for the teachers, but they could see like, oh my gosh, this kid who was failing, he's actually so bright. And we also had coaches. So maybe, hey, you're not going to be a professional football player. You don't have the skills, but you could be an agent and work with something that you love. Well, what does an agent do? What are the best schools that you could get into? So that now is in 55 schools. And the idea is if we can be in 2,500 high schools, that's 10%. And we went to the teachers unions and said, hey, why don't we get someone from the teachers union on board? They love what we're doing, but thinking that like business and the teachers union are arm in arm, who would have thought? So instead of making them your enemy, make them your friend, and let's figure this thing out together. And that has really worked. And, Harvard did a case study. This is one of the biggest things in education. Richard Branson funded a documentary that's on Netflix that you can watch on what they're doing. And he wanted to take this to the UK. He dropped out of school, had dyslexia when he was 14. And, if there was a program like this, he probably wouldn't have dropped out.
Yeah. Well, I like how you're connecting the dots to what I kind of look at as creating value in the world. I love asking the kids, and I get to work with a lot of them, how do you want to create value in the world? What are your value creation superpowers? Is it money? Is it emotional energy? Is it connectedness on the spiritual side? And I think that kind of drives, what they're going to learn to move them in the direction of actually doing it. When I work with kids on entrepreneurship, and I work with a lot of high school kids, usually juniors and seniors, and smaller groups, 25 to 50. I've done over 4,000 now. And one of the questions I ask them as we're going through all of this, and I share my history, I think a big thing that we're doing is just changing their limiting beliefs around what's possible, so they can literally start anywhere and go everywhere. But I asked them, hey, when you start your business someday, do you want headwinds or tailwinds? And we have a bit of discussion around it. And I ask them, well, what do you think causes the headwinds or tailwinds, this environment, from which you're running your business? And I point out, well, our elected leaders, create the laws, the policies, all of that, regulations that kind of drive it. And I'll go through different scenarios. And I ask them, hey, what do you think the role of government is? And I don't get very thoughtful answers around that. Um, so when it comes to the role of government, my view is, they're there to create better conditions for the citizenry to work, live, learn, and play at a lowering relative cost over time. Well, how would you answer that question?
Can you get into a little bit more detail of what would be the most helpful so I don't go down a rabbit hole?
Just generally speaking, when we're talking with kids, I'm a big advocate of being thoughtful when you vote, and so I'm basically a proponent of, hey, come up with a voting process that creates better conditions for your family, your business, anything affecting you, your communities. And so when you look at it that way, when you vote, have a filter process as voting for folks that will create better conditions that way. So that's how I think about it. I mean, what would be your advice for kids on the importance of voting and coming up with a process to get elected officials in place that will actually create a better environment for us to win?
Yeah, I mean, that's a deep question. And I, at least with my kids, it was all about civic engagement and the importance of teaching them the values that the country was founded on, and about communication and being open to listen to other points of views. And, I have two kids on one side of the aisle and two on the other. And the most important thing for me is that they participate in the process and that they're willing to talk to each other about why they're on other sides of the fence, and yet still be able to hang out at Thanksgiving and love each other, even though they have different points of views, and be willing to be questioned, not in a judgmental way, but to explain their position. So I think that's what you have to do. And I love, showing value is, teaching them the right frame of mind. And what are the values that we can teach our kids to be super successful? But on the voting front, I focus on why is it so important to be civically involved? And that if your particular party or person doesn't win, at the end of the day, we're Americans, and you support that person as best you can. And then when the next cycle comes along, try to get the person that you want in there. And hopefully they get in, and then people on the other side do everything they can to make that administration, whatever it is, whether it's school board or anything else, successful.
Yeah, I like focusing on the lower income family kids. That's where I came from, and I've done really well. I've started 8 companies now from scratch. I'm sure I'll start more. I've had 1 9, 1 8, 1 7-figure exits so far, and I'm doing that mainly to have the impact in the different philanthropic efforts that I have. And I think the largest untapped value creation potential is right there, because they kind of have the drive, but we need to change limiting beliefs. And when I look at the US, I don't think we're creating 10% of the value we could. And what if it was 20% or 50% or, dream state 80%? It would be an incredible world, going forward. So when it comes to actually creating value and the impact, maybe before we get into R360, you've had pretty significant business success as well. When I look at Sterling Financial, and I think it was, probably 8 years or so, you you sold it for a lot of money. You're 8 countries, 60 offices, and all that. Talk about that, and then let's jump over to the philanthropy stuff that you're doing.
Yeah. So look, since I was a kid, I was always involved, whether it was Boy Scouts, I was always doing something to improve the community, no matter how small. And I always felt that as a entrepreneur, I should always dedicate some of my time and bring my entrepreneurial grit to solve some of the world's most intractable problems, because you just think differently. Um, my first meeting of the State Board of Education, I was running Sterling Financial, but the governor called me and asked me to do this. So once a month, I'm in Tallahassee for 6 years. It was a huge time suck. But my first meeting, I was like, I'd like to see the strategy on how we're going to manage K-20 plus all of the state colleges and community colleges. What's the strategy? What are the tactics? What are our objectives? What is our number? What are we measuring against? And they didn't have one. I said, well, let's call one of the big guys, McKinsey, Bain, BCG, EY, to help us. Too expensive. We don't have the budget. So they went to lunch. I got on the phone and I started calling, and they came back and I said, oh, I just talked to Bain, and they said they'd be happy to do it pro bono. They'll invest 6 months of time, no more than 10 people, as long as they can compete like everybody else for whatever contracts come out of this, and they're not discriminated against. And everybody hemmed and hawed. They went ahead and picked Ernst and Young and not Bain. But entrepreneurs think different. It's like, we got a problem. Let's go fix it. No, so there's no money. Well, let's ask someone to do it for free. All these big corporations do stuff like this. And just not taking no for an answer. So, I got lucky. We have successes, we have failures. And R360 was sold to a public company. And then I had the Latin American operation, the international operation. I sold to UBS in 2012, which was a bigger and better sale than the first, as often happens. And then UBS took that $2 billion platform I gave them, and with their brand, they created it into $150 billion over like an 8-year period, just because my team stayed there until 2023. And it was, just to see it grow from 2 billion to 150 in such a short period of time. It was the Swiss bank, not the US. So for Latin Americans to have a local place they could put money into, but it was just like saving them the trip from going to Switzerland was a huge, huge deal. But all the US banks also got out. Merrill Lynch, Citigroup, everybody got out because of the issues with money laundering and things like that. And the regulations just became too severe.
All right. And then moving over to R360, what gave you the idea to start that? It sounds like just all the way through about service and making a big difference in the world. And, one of the challenges I have with nonprofits, and I've worked with a lot of them, is probably 90% of them, they have really good intentions, but they've kind of drifted into survival mode and just raising money to make payroll and not having the real impact. And a lot of nonprofits have difficulty picking a number, like, show me the impact. How are you measuring that? And they're super soft and subjective. My guess is with you doing this, your mindset's totally different when you go in to accomplish something. You're thinking about strategy. What's the number? How do we know? All of it. Yeah. What led up to R360?
You're absolutely right. So I had been I didn't have an MBA. So I became part of the Young Presidents Organization, YPO, and then Vistage at the same time. And had it not been for those two peer-to-peer organizations, I would not have succeeded. A peer-to-peer organization was started by some YPOers to solve what you just mentioned. And that was, why don't we start a peer-to-peer organization for nonprofit leaders, social entrepreneurs. And they did. And I became one of the first members in New York. And it really helped me because I did something crazy. I took over a Latino nonprofit that was bankrupt and they wanted to declare bankruptcy. And I came in for 4 years and I ran it. So, and turned it around so they didn't have to declare bankruptcy. But I ended up taking over this group called Tendril. And we grew it to 34 countries, 1,000 social entrepreneurs. And I brought in the discipline. I'm a believer in the EOS traction process. And I brought all these business tools to social entrepreneurs and taught them that business is not a bad word. It's not a bad thing. If you can increase your impact by 10x by bringing in these disciplined ways to grow and it makes your life a lot easier, that's what we did. But what I could never solve with these incredible social entrepreneurs was they were really bad at raising money. And I thought to myself, I took a year off. I was at Harvard at the Advanced Leadership Initiative, and then I taught at MIT for 2 years. How do you use behavioral analytics to lead high-performing teams? And during that time frame is when I came up with the idea of R360. Because I said, what if we went after individuals that had created minimum 100 million in liquidity through an exit? 80% probably are first-time entrepreneurs, but they're united by values, generosity of spirit being a big one. And then we connect that organization to these incredible social entrepreneurs, because I've already seen with some of our members where they'll come in and say, look, there was one particular case. It was a venture philanthropy nonprofit in Boston with about a $4 million budget. And this group said, how about this? I will completely fund your budget. In fact, I'll give you $5 million for 5 years, $25 million pledge. If you commit, you'll never take a donation below $1 million. It took them 4 months to come back and say, okay, we'll do it. And it grew to 200 million. And what they were able to do with that 200 million by also making, big gifts to proven, they really, and it's because of that, coming in and trying to help. Another one of our members went to a $1 million nonprofit in Israel, made a big donation, got on the board, and in 3 years, it went from $1 million to 10, 11, 12 million, impacting 10x the number of people because that nonprofit CEO was willing to be coached and to bring in, the EOS traction. I've seen it work in so many different nonprofits, and nonprofit leaders that have been there 17 years implement it. Probably half their staff end up leaving, but then 2 years later, their life is so easy because they have metrics. They can look at everything. They hire the right people with the right values. And you just got to teach them that business and business tools are not the enemy. If you really want to impact, what would it be like to have 10x impact in the next 3 years and you being able to sleep at night? 25% of nonprofit leaders suffer from depression. They don't have good health care. When they retire, a lot of them, they don't have pensions, and they're very close to the populations that they serve, and they get burned out. And to me, the rescue for them are operating systems, whether it's EOS or others, that really make them grow and scale. I hate to say, think of your nonprofit as a business because, the culture is so different, but that's basically what I did. And R360 is to bring these two communities together. We have about 170 members today. average net worth is 600 million. So, I mean, I have a week, we have 6 forms of capital. We believe that wealth is more than money, and it's not only financial, it's intellectual, it's social, it's human, emotional, and spiritual. So we have 6 buckets instead of your 3. I have meetings in Miami this week, and it's all social capital, which is your brand, your legacy. What are you doing with your time and your treasure? And we have this big Excel spreadsheet where it's like, if you're the patriarch or matriarch of your family, what are you doing personally with your time, with your money, to have an impact in your local community, in your state, in your country, and in the world? And how are you getting your spouse and your children involved? And what are strategies you can do with kids from 5 to 10, 10 to 15, 15 to 20? And those are the things that we talk about. And as our number, or the number that excites me, which is the middle, I also use Jim Collins' flywheel, which is the one tool that EOS doesn't have, which is a weakness, is 3 billion. So when we're at 1,000 members, I want to be touching 1 billion people on the planet in a positive way, and be able to prove it, and with numbers. The other numbers that are important for me is, when we first started, we have a strategy committee, and we said, look, we're going to bring in 54 members this year. And they said, no, you're not. So what do you mean? Said, you're going to bring in 25, because it's not about quantity, it's about quality. And the value add that we provide is the people sitting in the room. When there's 15 people in your group and you look around and you have the most incredible humans that then you become really close to, and you're helping each other out, that is the magic. And so 36, that's the number we're looking for per year. It's 3 people a month. And 72 is an important number, because the membership committee has turned down 72 families, including 9 billionaires. Why? Because they didn't align around our values, which has caused us to be named by 3 organizations that's the most exclusive private members club in the world to get into. And when I was at MIT, Bill Aulet wrote a book called Disciplined Entrepreneurship. I highly recommend it for any of your listeners, which goes through 26 steps and 24 buckets. And we went through all of those. There's more startups coming out of MIT than Stanford. People don't know that, but they're all engineers. And what we did is we called about 100 people that could be members on what was missing out there. And we came up to, like, at this level of wealth, you can basically buy anything, get into any organization. But to them, the exclusivity was so important. Like, if I can get into this place easily, it's not a place that I want to be in. Now, 15 of our members didn't go to college. 10 didn't graduate from high school, and 5 of those are billionaires, which I love to talk about, because we're not like with our nose in the air and a bunch of Ivy Leaguers. It's not about that. And I'm not on the membership committee, by the way. So I've had friends that, unfortunately, my relationship is frosty because they didn't get into the organization. So having, and then also there's, I'm an entrepreneur. I'm about numbers. I'm about growth. We were a Bitcoin treasury before Michael Saylor was in 2020. He started in August. So you have a treasury that's gone up 10x in 4 or 5 years, right? And we're cash flow positive. And our strategy committee is like, look, this is not a number. We're not going to ever be sold to private equity. We're going to be around 100 years from now. It's about growing with the right members and the most amazing humans that we can bring in, that are going to use their wealth and influence to change the world. We have one individual who has a $9 billion health fund who, through his operating business, which is for profit, has touched over 90 million humans globally in a positive way. Had they not been around, he measures that. And then with his philanthropy, probably another 5 million. So that's the type of person that says, wow, if we want to hit this $3 billion number, we want that guy in because he's going to help us get to that 3 billion.
Well, I think it's really smart. Culture matters. One wrong member literally could keep away hundreds of members that would otherwise be amazing members for the group. So completely agree with that. That's pretty incredible. Do you have just, if you can, we've got about 20 minutes left. Can you share a couple of stories about impact that's coming out of R360?
Look, we have a gentleman that has 5 daughters, and one of them had autism. So he's not a doctor, but he's an entrepreneur, entrepreneurial grit. So in trying to solve that, he figured out certain myths and things and was able to figure out treatments given early that don't involve medical and chemicals, which has had a huge effect. So now they're in 17 different states. He became Entrepreneur of the Year last year nationwide. We have 6 of them in R360, believe it or not, going back 15, 20 years. And so the effect that he's, let's say it would take 2 years to get somebody in and 3 months to get evaluated. He can evaluate somebody within 2 weeks and have in a program within 30 days. And it's a huge problem in the U.S. That's one. Another one, based in Florida, was giving money to Israel. And they have now the only blood bank that is actually underground. And they became the major proponent and donor behind that. Another one had cochlear ear implants and went through very difficult situation, losing their hearing. So they donated and started a program at the University of Miami, a big gift. And there's 2,000 children now that can hear and have cochlear implants. One of those non-high school graduates that went on to become a billionaire made their money in low-income housing and had experience with, when you're in foster care and you turn 18, they kick you out. And a lot of those kids go into, child sex trafficking, drugs. And one of the problems, at least in South Florida, is there's like there's no housing for like 3,000 kids. So he's using his chops in low-income housing to build housing that he owns, and then he'll get an NGO to bring 4 or 5 kids into those homes. But they have to be either going to college or full-time employment. So everybody has a different passion. We have a younger couple. She was going to be a missionary, but hates raising money. So she started a business to fund trying to stop human trafficking and violence against women. And her husband is a 20-year Green Beret sniper. And he has a nonprofit that brings 25 veterans, 5 cohorts a year. All of them have tried to commit suicide, and they repurpose them to, they're in Jamaica right now, big Cat 5 hurricane. 3 weeks ago, they were in the Philippines. So they take these former SEALs and Delta and Rangers, and they repurpose them to go save people. And then she and him rescued about 8,000 kids in the Ukraine that would have fallen into, when there's a war like Ukraine, the first people to move in are the child traffickers. So, it's stories and stories. What we're trying to do now is collect what everybody is doing, their impact. We just brought in a member, a woman who's just a firecracker, probably the most philanthropic person in all of South Florida. So, learning from them as to what they do, how they do it. How do you get involved in so many things to actually have an impact? How do you make sure that your dollars, or if you're on a board, that the organization is doing the right things? How do you affect culture with big organizations, right? So those are a lot of the things. One of our members is very involved in junior achievement. I was involved in the national level. I have 3 girls, so I went on to the national board of the Girl Scouts. 30 people on the board, only 2 men. I've never been in that type of board. Most people don't realize they're the 4th largest cookie company in the US. They're a $1 billion nonprofit because they make money selling cookies, and they train 2 million girls, but their membership was going down, 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 down. And because I was on the board, I said, let me work with the CEO and the team to turn that around. And we're able to do it in 3 years by bringing in really amazing resources to identify the problem. How do we turn that around? What do we do? And the Girl Scouts has over 100 cities or places they serve, and it's like a fiefdom where those presidents have a lot of power. And it's a decentralized system where the CEO, to get anything done, has to use leadership and influence. And because those presidents have quite a bit of power, and a lot of them have been there 20 years. So those are fun things that I like to work on, complex system change.
Yeah, that's some really nice social impact for sure. You touched on a couple of things. So there's this thread of keep learning, be curious, as a leader, CEO, all the way through. I joined, by the way, tech back in the mid 70s. And part of other CEO peer advisory groups, probably 40 years of overlap have been part of those groups. I even started my own format, and I've got 3 groups that I've been running for years, full groups. Each one's a full day. And so I think especially for nonprofit leaders, be part of something like that. And then this intentional operating methodology, I think all companies should have something that works for them. But you brought up a challenge. Usually when you do that, half the old leadership guard often changes out. And companies sometimes, organizations blow up because they don't change it out and they rebel against it. But it's a healthy struggle, I think, for organizations to go through. And then just coaching, listen to you talk about that in some of your podcasts. So that's, I like your encouragement there. Like you're constantly learning all the way through. So how do we get more leaders to lean into it? And all groups aren't created equal, right? Maybe talk a little bit about who's facilitating these groups, because I've witnessed hundreds of them, and 20% are pretty good. The rest of them are kind of mediocre going through.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And that's the number one thing in our flywheel for R360 is bringing in great chairs that have the right values, to train them right and make sure they have that service gene, because we're not recruiting facilitators, we're recruiting leaders. And the reason that I became successful is I said, look, this is my meeting. You guys are my guests because I am super curious, and I curated this because I want to learn this stuff. And if I want to learn it, I know they're going to want to learn it, and I want to get their viewpoints and what do they think. And then really focused on each individual in the room, on what are the pain points they have, how can I help them. I'll have their name and a blank. And if the meeting ends and I don't have 1 or 2 things where I can provide them value, then I get down on myself. Like, wait a minute, I wasn't listening enough. Nobody's perfect. What could I help them with? And what we do at the end of the meeting is everybody says, based on what I learned today, I want to be held accountable for these 3 or 4 or 5 things. And if they need a helping hand in anything, personal or professional, they'll say, and I could use a helping hand with this one and this one. So then I can then connect them with other people in the organization that have already solved that, or a resource that can help them solve that. And then when they come back in a year, It's like, okay, it goes on the board. These are the 6 things that you said you were going to get done. Did you get them done? And you don't want to be the person that says, oh, I got none of them done. And then it's, well, you're the patriarch of your family. You're the leader. What are you doing for yourself? What are you doing for your spouse? And what are you doing for your kids on intellectual capital? And AI, we spent a lot of time talking about, and I'm the chief AI officer for our company because, I have 3,000 hours invested into it over the last, call it 3.5 years. And now I'm working with each individual to say, how are you using AI to do the repetitive tasks that you're good at, but don't like to do, or you're not good at, and you definitely don't like to do, so that you can have more time to provide value to our customers. And now on a monthly basis, we give awards for the best agent. And, the messaging is clear. You're either on board, or a year from now, you're going to be gone. And we're going to teach you. We got the best platforms, systems. I will teach you personally if you want. And I hired a coach who has a dual degree from Duke and a master's in AI from Stanford, who's helping me now create agents and then working with my team, because obviously my videographer, my designer, or my event planner are going to need different, agents to help. So, AI is a whole thing. And then as the head of my family, helping my 4 children who are between 22 and 31, they should be teaching the old man about AI. But it's funny, it's the other way around,
Yeah. That could be a 2-hour discussion on AI alone and where that's going, best way to use it. Feels to me like the biggest downfall for a lot of folks is they start having it think for them and they're doing less, hoping to make more money. And then it just goes downhill from there. Not an efficiency tool in helping them think. Any quick thoughts there about the best approach?
Look, I frame it as a third mind. So when I say think, don't feel, AI can't feel. You can. You can think and you can feel. And I tell people, there's these DJs that get paid $100 million or more a year for spinning record, right? And I think of AI like that. Like, you have this capacity. You have the best teachers in the world if you know how to prompt. I'll spend 6 hours on a Saturday just prompting to get the right prompts, to get the right output. So it's not like you're letting them think for you. They become a partner. I can create an agent and I can be getting advice from Steve Jobs and Elon Musk and Sam Walton, and I can get like 6 different viewpoints of experts. I don't know how it does it, but it'll give me 6 different points of view, and then I can get them to start arguing with each other, and I can read the whole thing going, wow, I thought, yeah, that's an interesting. And then reading all of that, then you come up to your own conclusion, what will work in my organization and so forth. So, I think that if I can provide more value to my clients, my members, learn things at the speed of light, and it's getting so much better than it was a year ago and 2 years ago.
Yeah. And R360, are you dividing it up in smaller forum groups with chairs? Is that what I picked up on earlier?
Yeah, so 15 to a group. We have 5 chairs. We're interviewing 2 right now. So we're in New York, we're in Texas, we're in the Midwest, we're in California, we're in Deer Valley. We're about to launch the Mid-Atlantic group in DC. We're in South Florida. And we're interviewing some folks for like Boston, Chicago. And so a chair could have 3 groups of 15 over a period of time. And then it's leading that group, creating a community and helping them master the 6 forms of capital for themselves and their families. And mastering is a lifelong journey. So every year I'm resetting, well, what are my intellectual capital or social capital goals for the next 12 months? So I'm constantly upping my game as I get inspired and I learn from others.
Yeah. I have 6 different communities that I lead of families raising kids to create value. The majority of them are lower income families. And my goal is just to get them started. Like, just start. You've got a material, emotional, and spiritual value creation balance sheet, and here's how to kind of run at it. So I love that getting started. And then I kind of step back. I look at the bigger picture. The majority of the time, vast majority of the time, generational wealth is lost in 3 generations for all the reasons that I think we know. What are some of the best practices to set families up to grow all of that, to grow, the financial piece, the wealth and heritage generationally?
You got to start early with kids. There's things you can do from 5 to 10, having them work together on philanthropic issues, teaching them the principles of how you build wealth over time, how you spend less than you bring in, teaching them about certain asset classes and markets and investing, teaching them about the difference of being an employee versus having your own business and creating value. And teaching them basic budgeting and business school, building a business, communication skills. One of the biggest issues that I've had is just, I think so fast. My wife says, you're in your own, head, is stopping. And there's something called C Mama that's really helped me. CMAMA. And that is, it has to be clear, meaningful, achievable, measurable, and there needs to be accountability. So if you and I are talking, I'm like, okay, this is what you're going to do next quarter. Are we perfectly clear on what it involves? And then I explain to you why it's meaningful. Like, look, this may not seem big to you, but if this doesn't happen, then it's a block for these 3 big things. It just can't happen. And it has to be achievable. I can't tell you, to do something that's clearly not achievable. It has to be measurable. And then I have to say, look, on a scale of 1 to 5, tell me if this is going to get done. And if they say 4, I'll say, okay, well, what has to happen on my end to make it a 5? Let's talk about that. If they say 3 or below, it's not going to get done. So you have to have that clarity so that at the end of the quarter, there's absolute accountability and there's no, and I when I was younger, I didn't stop and do a C Mama to just make sure you and I were aligned. And even if I work for you, and the best advice I give my kids when they're employed in their business or the businesses that they work in, is to sit down with their boss and say, boss, I want to make you look good. And I want to know the next quarter or the next 12 months, how would you judge me outstanding? What would I have to do? And then I write that down, make sure I'm clear. I follow it up with an email, and then I ask for one more meeting. And I said, I just want you to verify these are the things. Okay, great. Now, can I add one thing? If I was to be exceptional, best you've ever seen, how would that change? And then I get those numbers. Then I followed up with an email, and those are my base numbers that I try to beat. Base. So when the end of the year comes or the quarter, and I'm making them look good, but most people don't want that, as you know, that accountability. They're new. They don't want, you have to, if you don't define the rules of the game, the football field, then it could be anything. But now that you have these emails in writing and you have accountability and agreement of what those things are, then you just got to go out and do them.
Well, kids today, I mean, it's so fascinating because I think our goal is how do we get them addicted to that journey? Like, this is so much fun. Look at the fulfillment, self-esteem that comes out of it. I had none of what you're talking about growing up, and yet I've gone from negative. My parents actually charged up credit cards in my name because they had my social security number, and I'm finding more and more in the low-income communities, this is kind of a normal way that families are interacting. And I was able to go from in the hole to generating multi-generational wealth in just my short time here so far. So what's different? How do we get them, hooked on that journey going forward? Motivational speeches don't seem to be it. I'm kind of leaning
No,
towards
you need
what's
a
the environment?
mentor. I mean, you're doing the right thing by mentoring kids. It's just when they're in a low income home, everything they're hearing is so different. Having someone really believe in them and help them and hold them accountable and care for them, you need. I mean,
Yeah.
that mentoring that you're doing goes so far.
In events, I listen to teachers and parents talk at and over the kids. Even the business mentors that come in, they talk way over the kids and they're just checked out. So I think there's a lot of lessons there in how we show up for our kids. So I agree. Charlie, this has been fantastic. I so appreciate you taking the time today with as busy as I know you are. Any last thoughts for our listeners?
Look, I think they need to focus on you talk about value, and in life, it's about giving value. The most important thing that I ever did in my life, which I will tell all your viewers to do, is to write your own eulogy. And the eulogy is, okay, pick a day that you're going to pass um, in the future, hopefully long in the future, and leave out achievements. Focus on two things. How did I make people feel, especially those that I love and are close to me, and what impact did I have in their life? 80% should be about that. And you can put some, maybe 10 or 20% on accomplishments and read it once a week or daily, because I really believe in manifesting. And if your calendar isn't leading you to your eulogy life, blow up your calendar, figure something else. And people only remember, your kids will only remember, your spouse will only remember how you made them feel and what impact you had in their life. And the same with all of my friends in R360. You could call them clients, but they're close friends now. And I focus on value. And value to me is, how do I make them feel and what kind of impact do I have in their lives that make their life better, and they become better humans. So a eulogy really helps crystallize that, because we're all, you know, going to be gone one day.
Well, yours is going to be amazing. If I remember, didn't you say your goal is 101 or 102, somewhere there?
101. And that was a issue that my father died at 61. So I thought, well, I'm going to die at 61. And I started hey, I got this bucket list and I was going 100 miles an hour. I had this YPO exercise for a retreat, and I had to ask my kids, what have I done well as a father and what are opportunities to do better? And they all, without exception, said, Dad, we really admire you. You're doing all this thing. But, what about me? When's the last time we went anywhere? Just the two of us. And for that matter, when's the last time we went on a family vacation? You're always like working and trying to change the world. And I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm not being the father that I should be. It's my number one responsibility. I'm so busy leading my life purpose to inspire and connect others to achieve extraordinary things that I haven't focused on my own immediate family. Big issue. So when I wrote the eulogy, a lot of it was, what can I do between now and 101 individually with each child and grandchildren and what can I do with them to help maximize their full potential? So at the end of the day, I just want them to live their full potential and lead a purposeful life. And how can I show up? And I teach my kids. Last thing I'll tell your readers, to me, the most important thing is, your life is not coming at you. It's coming from within you. And I believe all of us have divinity within us. And if you connect to that divinity, when you and I connect on an authentic basis, that divinity, and it's really our purpose is, how do we use our God-given gifts for the benefit of our families, humanity, the world, and figuring out what that gift is and executing on it, and providing like tremendous value It's going to make you really happy.
Well, if we ever get a chance to do this again, I'd love to talk about what you've learned around showing up holistically in the world and how you feel going through it, the impact that you have, and all of you've learned a lot there.
Well, let's do it. I'll invite you to Fortunate Fishes, and we'll have a conversation there. Well, I'll get to know you better, but you can ask me anything you want there also.
Yeah, I'd love to do that. And for our listeners, they want to learn more about your work or connect with you. What's the best way to do that, Charlie?
Charlie P. Garcia is my website. I also have a Substack, CP Garcia, if you're on Substack. I also write on Market Watch. You can find me there. Or you go to the R360 website, which is r360global.com. You can try to connect with me on LinkedIn as well. So happy to help. I mentor probably 20 kids. I love doing that.
Fantastic. I just subscribed to your thought leadership call. I'm looking forward to reading that in the coming weeks and months. So thank you for all that. And again, I really appreciate your time today, Charlie.
Thank you so much. Have a wonderful rest of the week.
Thank you. And this has been the Show Your Value podcast. If you got some value out of today's episode, I certainly did. Please like and subscribe. Until next time, show your value to the world.